Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Ophiuchus. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it 100% correctly, but I'm going to talk about whether I believe it's the 13th Zodiac sign and why. Now, the thing about it is, this is a subject that has started, obviously, some controversy and done some caused a lot of talk in the astrological community. There were reports that NASA had incorporated a 13th Zodiac sign, which would be basically wedged between Scorpio and Sagittarius. I saw at least one report online that refuted this, though, that NASA really didn't do this, and what it actually was that NASA had basically, someone in NASA, at least one person has it stated, that when the astrologers had started their system, that they excluded Ophiuchus. So I mean, the bottom line is whether somebody is saying that it's there or not, or somebody's incorporating this, saying it should be incorporated or not. Your zodiac sign, based on Western tropical astrology, is not going to deviate or change, because the Western system, astrological system, zodiac system, is based on, it's not based on the sun traversing the constellations. What it is, it's predicated more based, it's not more, it is based, predicated on the seasons. When we hit that spring, when we enter spring, that for Western astrology, that's when the sun enters Aries. When we enter summer, that is when the sun begins its transit of the zodiac sign Cancer. When we're talking about equinoxes and solstices, for those start, they go in a line with the transits of the zodiac entering those signs. When this was actually started, when Western astrology, I mean, apparently, supposedly when it began, what it was is it was devised in a way where you would have the sky basically divided into 12 equal components or constituents or sections. That's how it was devised. It's not based on the sun actually hitting that constellation, but it's more about it's more about the sun in its, as far as it's relative to as far as the seasons, because that is what we're actually what we're talking about, where we're talking about more of the sky position for the sun, and it's not about the sun hitting the constellation. Now, the thing about it is, this may have been, as far as the 12 zodiac signs that are used in Western astrology, and that may have been based on those 12 constellations. Now, the thing about this too is, and we have to keep in mind, it is irrelevant how many constellations there are. Again, not to be redundant, but just to reinforce this, that this is about the sun. It's about this. The Western astrology is based on the seasons, and it's not about the sun hitting the actual constellations. Now, another thing what people have to keep in mind too, I mean, if you think about it, if so all of a sudden, if there was a transition that was made, and we added, if Western astrology incorporated Ophiuchus, now that would actually contradict the manner in which Western astrology is done in terms of their system, because again, it's not based on the sun hitting the constellations. It's more the sky. It's more about the seasons, and we would have to, Western astrology would have to deviate and really eradicate their original system and then adapt to this new system, and that is just not how it works. The thing about this too is that when we look at this as well, you have, I mean, the Ophiuchus, I just wanted to say that, as far as the people that do believe it, and as far as the ones that might give some credence and credibility to this as far as a constellation and its impact on someone astrologically, it appears to be where it's supposed to be a combination of Scorpio and Sagittarius, where you'd have basically kind of like a blending of Scorpio and Sagittarius characteristics, and it's supposed to traverse sun's supposed to traverse this constellation somewhere roughly November 30th till like December 17th. And when I looked at this thing that had been reported, which I don't know if NASA even really did this or not, but what it was is it looked like Scorpio only had like 6 or 7 days based on this new, I guess you could say the new zodiac list, and as far as when the sun would be traversing the different the zodiac signs when they're incorporating this Ophiuchus into it. Now, to me, based on, I mean, the Western astrology, it's set up with symmetry, and you have the polarities between the zodiac signs. I mean, if you think about this, how complex this would really be. If you were to make a zodiac wheel, and with the ascendant and second, third house cusp, you would have one of the house cusps, which would not even have it would not have you're going to have one that doesn't have an opposite side to it, because you're going to have an odd number of house cusps. So my understanding is this Ophiuchus constellation would not have a polarity, would not have an opposite sign. It would be the only sign in the zodiac which would not have an opposite zodiac sign. And the thing I want to go back to, as far as the few out there that might actually believe that this Ophiuchus gives some kind of characteristics to somebody if they're born at that interval, which I was describing before, like roughly November 30th to December 17th, that could be. Yeah, I mean, if you're incorporating Scorpio Sagittarius energy, one example could be somebody that has a lot of exuberance and enthusiasm going beyond the superficial, or digging deep into things, maybe digging deep Scorpio into things maybe in foreign countries, for example, or through their exploration in foreign countries, perhaps, or a person that might like to take higher courses or higher education in something Scorpio related. I mean, this is I mean, of course, it could manifest in a multitude of ways, but the thing about this is, I believe this could have obviously some biblical correspondences as well. You're talking about the 12 disciples and 12 zodiac signs. Each of those disciples may very well have been a zodiac sign. And the thing about this is you have, and again, you have very, the polarity set up. You have the 12 zodiac signs, and each zodiac sign has an opposite sign on, you could call it like the axis, or as far as its polarity goes. You have a house system that has 12 houses, and of course each house corresponds or correlates with a zodiac sign. And the thing about this too is I mean, if we think about this, we've seen transits that have transpired over the years that, I mean, that obviously they seem very voracious to me. They seem to have a lot of validity. If we were to go back and we were to redo this whole thing with the ephemeris and incorporate Ophiuchus into it, I believe a lot of these transits, of course, would not be valid. I mean, the one example, a very basic example, and some of you may have heard this, but a lot of people have not really looked at this one. But in World War II, when the second atomic bomb was dropped, really on that day, if I'm not mistaken, the Black Moon Lilith had transitioned from Libra into Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, of course. It can be about things that are like atomic, things that are nuclear, and destruction. And when that transition going over from Libra to Scorpio, to me, signifies the ending, because you're going from 29 degrees Libra into 0 degrees Scorpio, to an ending of any possible negotiation, compromise, peace talks, what have you. and going into warfare and doing something destructive. Now, if Ophiuchus was put into this equation back then, I would say at least likely that Black Moon Lilith, if not 100%, would not have been in Scorpio. It wouldn't have hit 0 degrees Scorpio at that time. And we could go on. We understand other transit examples. Hold on a moment, people. There was another transit example that I thought of was, I don't remember the exact date, but I had researched this previously. It was March, I believe, in 1991, if I'm not mistaken. At the time, transit Sun in Pisces was conjunct. I believe her name was Jessica Keene. She was in an infamous situation where she got murdered in a graveyard. Transit Sun in Pisces was very close proximity to her natal, going to the Black Moon Lilith again. And the thing about it is, she had gotten raped on that night, and she had been murdered that night. And of course, when you have transit like the Sun hitting the Black Moon Lilith, you're talking about Sun could be about dominance, a dominant male, somebody. It could be domination, and then you're talking about it hitting the Black Moon Lilith, and it can be through some being in Pisces, maybe dominating with some erotic, warped sexual matter to fulfill some warped fantasy. And also, you're talking about Black Moon Lilith can be nefarious, and hitting the Sun is about life. Sometimes I think the Black Moon Lilith, when it's involved in a transit with the Sun, can eradicate life, which is what happened, sadly, in this case. The conditions at that graveyard were very foggy, nebulous, and unclear. So that transit likely would not have happened at that point in time if we were to incorporate Ophiuchus into the equation. And some other things to consider too, that we're based on the current Western astrological zodiac sign system. For another example, when we have the sun entering Aries on or around March 21st every year, the thing about that is, right around that time, of course, many of us come out of isolation, solitude, and seclusion, which of course is synonymous with the zodiac sign Pisces. And people can be very energetic and pioneering and want to embark on new projects and endeavors. It just seems too coincidental to me that would be rendered, that for that not to be valid. Because if we were to incorporate Ophiuchus into this, then obviously the Sun, we would be looking at the Sun not entering Aries on March 21st, and it would be at a different day. And I think it just seems to me the beginning of spring, the beginning of the zodiac sign Aries, seems to correlate really strongly to me. And another example, the Sun, when it enters Sagittarius on or around December 22nd every year, that's a time for many people that celebrate Christmas, is where people often become very philanthropic. They may start to buy Christmas gifts for people. It's a period where people are very exuberant and expansive, and they're very joyous and jocular. And then when you have the Sun entering Capricorn, which is, of course, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. When the Sun will enter Sagittarius, I've said the Sun enters Sagittarius on around November 23rd, not December 22nd. I just want to be kind of rewind, made a mistake, I'm sorry. But again, when the Sun enters Sagittarius, people often become more expansive, more philanthropic, and they're often very exuberant, enthusiastic. They often want to buy Christmas gifts for others. People can be very jocular and joyous, very happy. And then when the Sun enters Capricorn, what would astrologers use, Western astrologers use, when the Sun, when winter officially begins on or around December 22nd every year, people seem to become a little bit more despondent with the colder weather. Capricorn could be rather colder energy. People become more serious. They're more premeditative. They're often making their plans. Capricorn is often about planning and premeditation and doing so for the coming year. So for those reasons, I mean, to me, the zodiac, the Western zodiac, I don't think should be changed. I think everything is fine. the way it is. There's some people that might want to use that Ophiuchus. There's no law against it, but I just don't think, as far as Western astrology goes, it wouldn't work because you'd be changing the whole system around and having it. And to me, that there's no, you might as well, you would almost have like, you would have basically a different setup, a different system if you were to make the transition from what Western astrologers are doing now to incorporating what would be a 13th Zodiac sign, Ophiuchus. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.